I'm here to let you know about a steadily growing number of scientists you may be unaware of. They may not yet be on your radar, nor you on theirs. Many of them, in fact not most, have never heard of the ISC, IAP, GYA or TWAS. I think they've heard of UNESCO, but they represent a bottom-up movement of concerned scientists who are compelled to do more, and you should know about them. They are committed, passionate, articulate and brave. They are responsible science activists. We know the world is on fire, and we know that our global frameworks, conventions and accords are proving ineffective. Our governments continue to ignore scientific warnings, political inertia, misinformation and conspiracy theories, and an active disdain for the truth are all on the rise. The science community has been warning policymakers about the climate and ecological crisis for decades, but our voices are not being heard. We use multiple methodologies and platforms to try to get our collective voice heard. These are all good, these are all necessary, but emergency times call for emergency measures. Frustrated by the lack of progress, a growing number of scientists, not just climate scientists, but those from many disciplines, are turning to more active advocacy to get their voices heard. From publications to public actions. They do not do this lightly. They do it because they are compelled to. They cannot simply continue to document in ever greater detail a preventable catastrophe. So science activists are throwing their support behind social movements like XR or Extinction Rebellion, and they are taking to the streets to demonstrate and disrupt peacefully. Science activists maintain, and I completely agree with them, that this is not politicizing science. It is not compromising its integrity or its objectivity. It is another form of science communication and another form of engaging with the public, a common theme for this forum. Bottom-up social movements have historically affected transformative change. #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, women's right to education, LGBTQ rights, women's suffrage, for example. A simple act of peaceful disobedience and disruption stimulates media coverage and vital public scrutiny and debate. The IPCC itself has recognized that collective action through social movements can effect social change. Scientist Rebellion is a global movement of academics who believe that civil disobedience can help push urgent climate action. Moving away from their labs and offices and onto the streets, they also run regular welcome meetings, talks, events and campaigns. They currently operate in 32 countries in purely voluntary, bottom-up, self-organized, unfunded ways. They urgently need more members in very many more countries. Much of what science activists do is hugely rewarding. They join, these are all largely UK images, for which I apologise. Much of what they do is hugely rewarding. They join public marches wearing white coats so that people can approach them and ask questions, hearing about the science directly from the scientists. In being visible in social movements pushing for urgent and transformational change, they are affirming the reality and the urgency of the crisis we face, not only through their research, but through their actions. And by doing this, I firmly maintain they are building trust. Science activists also target key stakeholders. The insurance sector, who insure oil and gas industry, governments who subsidise them, the legal profession to defend our juries and allow climate change to be used in defence, organisations who facilitate greenwashing, and here we have an example of the UK Science Museum with a coal industry-sponsored exhibition. In addition to marches, they engage in novel ways with the public, and in doing so, they build trust. They run Ask a Scientist Live stalls and calls. They participate in family days at museums with games and other learning activities for children and conversations with their parents on the ecological and climate emergency and the importance of taking action. They are engaging and they are accessible. They are scientists and global citizens. But of course, there is a dark side too. Some of what they do is not comfortable. It is peaceful, but it is disruptive, and it can risk arrest. Risks are hugely dependent on geographic and cultural context. In some countries, protesting is either illegal or extremely dangerous. And in others, like my own, the UK, there is an increasing curtailment of the right to protest. Social media, as a number of our speakers have said, can be vitriolic, and activists are routinely subject to online and sometimes physical abuse. It is entirely up to the individual scientists, of course, whether or not they choose to join such movements or practice advocacy in different ways, depending on their personal circumstances and their tolerance to risk. Nevertheless, there are multiple ways in which scientists can support science activism according to their level of risk. For every one individual who risks arrest through peaceful but disruptive processes, there are many people behind the scenes supporting them, often in very discreet ways. Through research and teaching, financial contributions, endorsement and facilitation, and active participation. You are here as leaders of scientific organisations, of networks and of networks of networks. You are here as individual members of the global science community and as global citizens. You are multipliers and you can help support social movements. So I have two questions for you. To what extent have you, as members of the global science community and as leaders of its institutions, given thought to how you can support and protect scientists who feel compelled to become responsible science activists, who are trying to do something beyond traditional and arguably tired methodologies? My second question is, to what extent could this type of advocacy and activism shift professional norms for science, such as becoming an integral part of research evaluation metrics? In conclusion, I would argue that peaceful, disruptive science activism is a legitimate expression of academic freedom and a vital part of the global science community's toolkit for communicating science and influencing public opinion and policy. Leadership organisations in this room should recognise and support it in any way they can, not least in terms of moral support, but also the welfare and the safety of science activists. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Tracey, and indeed you brought another dimension to this debate, and also a group of scientists that, as you mentioned, that we are probably putting them only on the activist group without taking out their own right of being called also scientists. And I think this, again, very much linked to the topic. What can institutions like UNESCO, like ISC, like the European Union, but also like the academies, the research institutions, the universities, what do you think needs to be done now to really push this agenda as part of building trust, but also of building science for peace and using science to build peaceful societies?
Well, three quick things. I think whatever this, these group of organisations, whatever you choose to do, I think science activists will continue to work anyway, regardless, because they're doing their own thing in their own way. The second thing I would say is that social movements are all about solidarity. They do often engage marginalised communities. They bring a diversity of ideas and perspectives. They're inclusive, and I think we could learn from them. and really be part of those movements. And thirdly, I would say in terms of, we have very little evidence base on the effect, on the impact and the efficacy of science activism. And that is something I think that perhaps this community here could think about, how to research that and provide an evidence base that helps the science activists further justify what they're doing, if justification were needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracey. Although I would say it's not a matter if they continue or not, what we are trying to discuss is how do we open up spaces, that I think that's what Karisha was putting in the table, to really have all these voices contributing to a change agenda and also to a much safer world, not only for scientists, but for humanity in general. And also because since yesterday, there has been a lot of discussions how the framework and also the social contract is changing and how different actors are coming to play that need to be considered both by academia but also governments, that there are other players that need to have space also to influence the science discourse, the impact of science in development, and that definitely includes civil society